going? Yeah, I think so. Okay. Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Esther Toot-Wieden. I'm the director of the Sustainable Freight Buyers Alliance. It is my pleasure to welcome you all here today on Transport Day at COP. And before we get started, let me tell you that I started to work at Smart Freight Center a bit over 5 years ago as an industry relations manager, and my role was to engage the companies. And quite early on, we understood that the shippers play a very important role to make sure that we decarbonize freight. And I can tell you it was very hard to find shippers who understood their role to decarbonize freight, to understand the very important push that they can give on the supply chains in this direction. And the idea of this collaboration has been also growing in the past few years quite rapidly. And as BSR and SFC has continuously engaged more and more in our joint initiatives we also got support from the industry to do more collaboration together. And we were very happy that Women in Business has seen that this collaboration needs support, and therefore earlier this year we got the support to really launch the Sustainable Freight Buyers Alliance. And we have been very busy working on the concept in the past few months and having a lot of consultations and landscape analysis. So we are here today to present to you what we have come up basically after this many years of consultations in essence, and to present you what is the way we're going forward, and to present who are the first set of companies who are accompanying us on this journey. So what we're going to see today in this session is quickly, we are going to introduce you SFBA, and then we will have a couple of video messages from companies who really wanted to express their support but couldn't be here today. And then we will have a panel discussion where we will go in more in detail about the different value proposition of the Alliance. So that's what we will hear today. And let me just quick start by saying that really by collaborating and bringing our efforts and initiatives together, we would like to create a center of gravity to make green freight more simpler, more easy to access and procure for many companies. And that's why we say the Smart Freight Center, BSR and World Economic Forum is already a very good sign to join forces under this alliance and bring this into success. So what is the mission of SFBA in a nutshell? So we want to unite both freight buyers and freight decarbonization initiatives to shift to net zero across all modes of transport. So we're going to do this by having three work streams, focusing on three areas. First of all, we want to streamline scalable solutions. Secondly, we want to catalyze concrete collaboration. And thirdly, we would like to demonstrate tangible progress. So the question is how we are going to do this, of course. But before we launch into this, we found it very important to actually, besides the goal of decarbonizing and zero emissions, we find it very important to have also a charter whereby companies can indeed commit to have the right ambition, to take the right steps, and to be held accountable and also advocate. So we established the SFBA charter where companies are committing on these main elements. And in that charter, we also put forward 2 targets, although again, that's not the most important element of SFBA, but we still would like to share these targets with you. We ask companies signing the charter to have an individual company target of 50% emission reductions latest by 2030, whereby the base year is not older than 2015. This is an ambitious target which actually just selected a number of companies from given sectors can commit to, but we still thought that it's a very important element to have an ambitious target out there and to inspire others as well. And to make sure that with this charter signatures, we're going to work with the latest companies in the starting track. Then we also set a collective target for SFBA. and that is 100 million tons of CO2 equivalent reduction by 2030. And we did set this target, and not just because we will be able to track this actually, but also to make sure that we set a very symbolic element here, which is about bringing companies together and collaborating also towards a collaborative target. So I would like to share now a little bit the challenges, what we have selected that we would like to address in the SFBA. And these are the challenges we haven't seen being addressed well enough. These are the gaps which the industry have shown us that needs to be covered somehow. And then first one, there is the difficulty to find the solutions. There is really a lot of options out there, and companies, especially those who are just starting their journey towards sustainable freight, are very limited in terms of understanding how to find a way in the labyrinth. So that was the first challenge. The second challenge is the individual efforts, which are very limited. That's what we often hear for companies, that they are interested in certain innovations, but they can't do that alone. Then the third element is there was a missing alignment on demonstrating the progress. Companies are not calculating the same way, companies are not assessing their different achievements the same way, and there is definite need to do that and track emissions in a transparent manner. So the way we are going to address these challenges is, first of all, we will have a work stream on scaling solutions with an initiatives map, with solutions pathway tool, and also with the net zero procurement principles support. And this all to make sure that there is a clarity and access to streamlined and impactful actions for all companies. Then the second one is to catalyze concrete collaboration. And here we are going to bring in a collaborative platform, in a so-called marketplace, if you like, companies and existing initiatives as well. So again, this is a very important element of the alliance, to bringing in existing initiatives to streamline basically further companies towards these existing initiatives. Then that's impact, of course, to accelerate the impact through collaboration. And the third one is to establish a very clear system to track freight emissions, both for the companies and both for the initiatives, the collaborations which are out there, just to make sure that we can focus really for the most impactful interventions. And that's all towards that net zero target, and of course to keep the 1.5 degrees scenarios target. Now let me invite you, two of my colleagues, David Way from BSR, he is Managing Director for Climate, and Lauren Upping from World Economic Forum. She's heading the aviation, transport and tourism at World Economic Forum. So we have been working together with them. So I would like to invite them quickly to pick and choose some of the elements of this quite busy overview to share a little bit more details.
All right. Great. So at the World Economic Forum, many of you will know we're the international organization for public-private partnership. But we're also in our industry group are divided into the different industry groupings. So I look after aviation, travel and tourism, but I work with colleagues in automotive, in supply chain, in shipping, etc. And alongside that, we also have communities of investors, communities of professional services firms, etc. So we've been working for some time now, obviously with our own communities of carriers and shippers, etc., who are obviously very ambitious on wanting to decarbonize their sectors. But we're seeing increased interest from buyers of freight and travel, etc. And we're seeing that across modes. And in my case, especially with air freight. So, but we're also seeing this proliferation of different activities in this space, and are hearing from our partners that they need clarity, they need standardization, they need certainty of these different pieces all moving in the same direction. And so for us as the World Economic Forum and the partners that we represent, in SFBA, it makes absolute sense to be making sure that there's a space where all of those things can align, that there is a resource that becomes something that helps all of those all go in the same direction. And so the collaboration effort is certainly where we see some of the greatest value to be created through SFBA, and delighted to collaborate on that. You may have seen just last week we launched the First Movers Coalition, so a version of a buyers club, and there's a Sustainable Aviation Buyers Club as well. So there's a number of these initiatives, and we're certainly wanting to make sure that through this effort we can demonstrate where there's real progress, we can amplify that, and of course have a space where if there's those folks who aren't necessarily at the forefront of this, have an opportunity to come and learn from those who are and can collaborate in this endeavor.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much. For those of you who don't know BSR, we are a global team of sustainable business experts that works with our 300 member companies to build a just and sustainable world. Over our 3 decades working on corporate sustainability, we've launched probably 50 collaborations, and we've worked in the freight space for about 2 decades now. And we are really pleased to work with Smart Freight Center and the World Economic Forum on the SFBA. I want to make a couple comments on the solutions plank and on the collaborations plank, and then maybe tell you a little bit about how we'll move forward in time. On solutions, I think yesterday, Climate Action Tracker released sort of their analysis of current announced pledges from countries. And it's pretty simple, right? Current policies take us, by the end of the century, to 2.7 degrees. Pledges, to add them all up, you get to 2.4 degrees. And then they created this optimistic scenario, which takes us to 1.8 degrees if all of those pledges and all of the net zero announcements and aspirations are actually implemented in time. And what I read from that was really simple. It's that the difference between 2.7 and 1.8 is implementation at scale. That's the difference. And the SFBA is one of the initiatives that intends to take implementation to scale, to begin to close that gap. Few companies have the bandwidth to focus on freight emissions in categories 4 and 9 of their Scope 3 footprint. Even fewer have bandwidth to sort through all of the different solutions. And so that's why it's really important that one of the planks of the SFBA is on solutions. Companies with exceptionally limited bandwidth need to be able to sort through them and to pick. And that is not the dozen or so that are currently piloting solutions. We are talking about the hundreds that need to scale those solutions. Esther has mentioned the SFBA's sort of various ways that we'll tackle this particular problem. Already, I think there is a solution pathway tool that will be refined that will help companies pick the solutions that are best suited to them. We've been working, all of our organizations have been working on procurement practices. And so by sort of aligning them and by scaling and spreading their application, that too will help solutions to come into play. Our aim, obviously, is to scale these up and to feed this collective goal of 100 million tons. And I want to note, this 100 million tons, it's not 100 million avoided tons. This is 100 million tons of reductions tracked multimodally in freight by 2030. That is the collective ambition of this particular initiative. A little bit more about collaborations too. This room today, Transport Day, will show you that collaborations are blossoming all over the place. I actually take this as a good sign. It is a sign that the pie is getting bigger and everyone wants their piece. So it is a sign, it is a signal of mainstreaming that in fact we are, that we are succeeding. That still creates complexity for companies, right? And so companies have to navigate now more initiatives that work together in an ecosystem and that they have to deliver impact in this ecosystem. The SFBA is going to do things to try and help that, and Esther has mentioned some of those. There will be landscaping of collaborations in the freight ecosystem. The SFBA will bring these collaborations together. They include some that are, for example, methodological, like the GLEC at Smart Freight Center. There are some that are reporting focused, like Clean Cargo at BSR. You'll hear a bit more about that later on. And really the highest value will be to bring together all of the action initiatives, the ones that will actually deliver solutions or scaled solutions towards this 100 million ton goal. These can be from organizations, like they can be the Sustainable Air Freight Buyers Alliance, for example, and they can also be from companies, right? I mean, it can be about Maersk's new 8 green methanol ships. They can come from companies. They don't have to just come from organizations. By bringing them all together, you also get much better networking. I know that there is now currently planned a sort of a sustainable freight, a smart freight week. We are thinking May 9. Esther may be able to provide more details on the practicalities of it, but that consolidation will really help. Maybe, Esther, if you're okay, I'll speak a little bit to the timeline. So, as with other initiatives that we have incubated, the SFBA has now gone through an inception period. And during this period, we've developed a charter together to align our vision. We've really developed how we work together as three partners, as SFC, BSR, and WEF. We're recruiting a set of leading companies who will sort of agree with the charter and will participate further in an incubation period, the period when work streams are fleshed out, when hard governance arrangements are fleshed out, and you arrive to the end. And during that period, we'll also, in effect, develop a beta version of the tools that the SFBA will formally launch. And then, of course, everyone needs a good deadline to get moving. And so the Smart Freight Week is then not only your networking opportunity the week of May 9, it is therefore also our deadline to finalize all of those arrangements so that we can deliver value to you the week of May 9. So I think Esther can also point to, for example, the SFBA landing page. There's now sort of a website, online resources that are up that will help guide our work going forward there. So thanks.
Thank you very much, David. Yeah, so that's what we could like to indeed share with you about SFBA, like say, the need to knows for the movement, and more information will be on our website, which we have launched today, and a landing page which has now on SFC's website. But thank you very much for both of you to helping present this. We will shortly have a panel, but before that I would like to play some short videos from some of the companies we have been working together in this inception period.
Partner externally with our carriers and with our retailers. Partner externally with university, R&D centra, startups and scale-ups. No need to explain that building partnerships take time, while the time to act is now. The Sustainable Freight Buying Alliance, short SFBA, wants to bring around the table players with clear net zero commitments. The SFBA is creating a platform for accelerated alignment of innovative decarbonization pilots, and is creating a great platform for the needed accelerated partnership. An initiative which P&G obviously wants to support and embrace by joining SFBA.
Hello, and welcome everybody to Transport Day at COP26. My name is Jessica Kipp, and I lead HP's worldwide logistics organization within supply chain. Our vision is to make HP the world's most sustainable and just technology company. Earlier this year, HP announced some ambitious company-wide sustainability goals. For climate, HP will reduce our CO2 impact 50% by 2030 and become net zero by the year 2040. Logistics is included in the company-wide effort, so the Smart Freight Buyers Alliance will develop the framework and governance to allow shippers and carriers to aggressively decarbonize our supply chains. HP is excited in this new collaboration, and we look forward to the future initiatives to lead HP and the logistics industry to net zero freight transportation.
Whether you're a big corporate or a small company, when you start thinking about logistics sustainability, you will quickly arrive to three conclusions. Conclusion number one, you need a method to map and measure your emissions and to be able to report on them in a structured and transparent manner. For that, we have the GLEC framework. Conclusion number two, you can't do this alone. You need to collaborate with your logistics service providers, but also with other shippers and your customers. Conclusion number three, last but not least, you need to innovate, and you need to be able to identify the right technologies to pilot with the right partners. Sustainable Freight Buyers Alliance brings all these three things together, and that is why we at Tata Steel are happy to engage with them.
The sustainability agenda is moving extremely fast, and especially decarbonization is becoming a strategic imperative for Maersk and for many of our customers. As a global logistics and shipping company, we are already fully committed to zero carbon by 2050 latest. And the Smart Freight Buyers Alliance really supports this agenda. It offers the key sustainability and logistics platform for collaboration and alignment, both between companies for best practice sharing, for example, but also as a group that brings together the key initiatives in the world, such as clean cargo, GLEC, and so forth. We urge all sustainability leaders and large companies to join this initiative so we can together drive improvements across the whole logistics industry.
Yes, thank you. Lauren and David, if there is anything you wanted to add to these messages, maybe? Or let's give the chance for the panel to comment. All right, thank you. Just maybe because before I ask the panelists, just to say that we missed the first part of Procter & Gamble's messages. So the gentleman who was talking there is Bram Ketelaar, and he's heading Procter & Gamble's initiative on sustainable logistics. So just quickly to say that. And now I would like to welcome on the stage Owen Battle, who is a Senior Manager of Environmental Impact Global Public Affairs from Nestle. Olivier Corvès, who is Executive Director of Smart Freight Center. Aaron Kramer, who is the President and CEO of BSR. Bart Dar, who is a Group Executive VP of Maritime Policy and Public Affairs at MSC. And Sophie Punta, who is the founder of Smart Freight Center and currently the Managing Director of Policy at Women Business. Welcome. Right. So we just have seen a couple of messages from companies. So therefore I would like to maybe start with Owen, asking him as representing Nestle, how you resonate with the messages of these companies, and basically how you see that the Smart Sustainable Freight Buyers Alliance can help your efforts in reducing emissions from freight. And at all, why is it important for you to reduce emissions from freight as a shipper? It's a Scope 3 emission.
Sure. So thank you. Thanks very much for the invitation to speak today. And it's great to be here supporting SFBA and it's all of the work that you've been doing to get to this point. I think for us as a major FMCG company, when we think about climate, we think primarily about nature and about land, because that's where the majority of our Scope 3 emissions lie. So about 2/3 are related to things like dairy production, coffee production, cocoa production, and quite rightly, a lot of the company's focus is there. But we cannot forget that we need to move those ingredients around the world. We need to process those ingredients. We need to get them to our customers. And so addressing emissions from freight and logistics is just as important as the work that we're doing on our supply chain, in particular helping farmers around the world. So logistics make up about 8% of our overall carbon footprint. So that's more than 7 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent every year. That's a big amount. That's a big number. It's a big opportunity. And as we're not a company that makes ships or sources fuel or all those things that need to be addressed to meet this challenge, we need to work with others. I think SFBA is a great example of potential collaboration opportunities, along with the other initiatives that we've heard about as well today.
Okay, thank you. So can you give us maybe a number, just that we also understand what is freight? What percentage does freight represent in your overall supply chain?
Sure, yeah. So it's basically around 8%. So of that Scope 3 emission figure. And what we've done is we've broken down our Scope 3 by all the different activities that we engage in. That means it goes into our roadmap. We've got a 20% absolute reduction target by 2025, 50% by 2030 in terms of our overall emissions, of which logistics and freight will make a contribution. The speed of that contribution, the way forwards does depend a little bit on industry transformation. That's why it's good to be here today and to support this initiative and see where this can help accelerate action.
Yes. So if you can share a little bit on that, on how you see that SFBA accelerating that action.
Absolutely, yeah. So you set out the three main areas of activity, and I would add an additional one, which is around advocacy and around engagement. So we're all here joining forces today, and I've been doing quite a lot of that over the last 10 days, hence my slightly disheveled appearance now after 10 days in Glasgow. But that's going to continue into the future. We're going to see, I think, a lot of progress between now and COP27 on this agenda. It'll be interesting to see how we can all collaborate over the next 12 months and come back together and see what progress has been made. So I think advocacy is really important. I think streamlining the different initiatives, again, there's so many different coalitions that we're involved in that we do have a challenge in making sure that we're putting our efforts and not in the right places, not spreading ourselves too thin. So, that's a really important objective for Nestle. And if SFBA can help us go in that direction, that's going to be very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Owen. Now, I would like to turn to Bud, who is actually, this is the first time I think you have heard more about the Sustainable Freight Buyers Alliance, but the very reason I think, which is very important that you are here with us today, is that you are part of an industry action group of the World Economic Forum, which just today released a supply chain and transport industry statement of support for green demand alliances and book and claim standard. So how do you see that statement, which you have signed in the name of MSC along with other 16 companies, how do you see that being brought alive or being represented by SFVA?
Yeah, thank you. And I think they work together in tandem. And at the World Economic Forum Industry Action Group for Transport, we've been looking at ways that we can collectively move towards major policy objectives, decarbonization being one of them. And we, as a carrier, and there are many other carriers that really are the center of gravity of that group, want to find ways and encourage ways for our potential customers, the shippers, to be able to leverage their buying power to provide the vehicle to deliver the fuels that are needed. And so if they have the motivation, we've got the ships, we've got the willingness to do it. The shortcoming is we've got to find the fuels. The fuels are expensive, and there are not a lot of smaller companies in particular that are capable of doing this on their own. And there also is the complication that in containerized shipping, which is our core business, it's not really possible to match up the consumption of a particular fuel with a specific container on a specific trade route. So we are working with the very small number of customers that have raised their hand and say, hey, we want to be part of this. We want to help with biofuel, for example, and finding internal mechanisms that are bespoke. But I think a book and claim type of mechanism that helps bring consistency, make sure that there's not double counting and that there's actual accountability throughout the supply chain for these decarbonized or low carbonized fuels would be really, really helpful. So we support that too, and we want to help our customers meet their Scope 3 emission needs and at the same time reduce ours. And I will mention, with biofuels being one of the few options that really is available right now, my company used 850,000 metric tons of biofuel in 2020, up to 47% blend. No one has been that aggressive with biofuel usage. In that case, because there was some government support, we didn't have to pass any of those costs along to the customers. We didn't get any regulatory credit for it, but we thought it was the right thing to do, and we're really ready to use that. So if we can match up with the right customers or groups of customers, it's a win-win for everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So we have heard now a couple of solutions and the perspectives. So Olivier, as you're representing Smart Freight Center and with that also the GLAC framework and the GLAC, of course, I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit more what role you see for that in terms of ensuring that these solutions and these actions which are being now they're put forward are actually really reducing the results towards the targets we're setting.
Yeah, I think the way we're going to frame this is it all bounds to tracking and emissions. So we are going to really leverage the GLAC framework to monitor basically evolution from the membership and where the solutions are evolving to. So I think the maturity level on the solutions are different. You mentioned about cargo, road, and air, where are different maturity levels, and therefore, the level of ambition will vary across the board, depending on what's available, on the cost, and a lot of short-term and long-term solutions tied to that.
Thank you. So today on this platform, on this stage, we hear a lot of presentations about zero emission solutions as well, which should be the focus. But is it possible to indeed not to only focus on these solutions? Olivier, and maybe this one again to you. So can emission reductions targets be met also, not only just focusing towards zero emission solutions, in your view?
Which part is that again?
So, what other elements you see being important or being put forward in the IS Alliance as well, besides zero emissions solutions?
Well, the long term, like we need to aim for short term zero emission vehicle, obviously as a must. We must focus on that, and then the long term 1.5 degree pathways need to be part of the long term view. So we'll be tracking on the short term against the zero emission vehicle and what the companies are doing, and the long term whether or not the goals 1.5 degrees are being that's a long term view for such.
Okay, thank you. Now I would like to turn to you, Aaron, and from BSR, and BSR has a great experience with launching different climate and freight initiatives, as David mentioned before. So what are the main activities and expectations that you have including now in SFBA? What are the learnings you will bring here forward in this alliance?
Thanks very much.
I hope it's good.
Thank you. We have seen collaboration after collaboration launched here at COP, and it's absolutely fantastic. And hope to talk a little bit about the importance of consolidation. But taking a step back, this is ultimately about systems change, and it's a phrase that's used a lot, and I think it's thrown around a little bit with abandon. But if you think about it, this kind of collaboration actually lays the foundation for real systems change. Well, why is that? If you aggregate enough power from purchasers, then you start to create some virtuous circles. The flywheel of progress starts going. So you can promote more innovation. If you're an MSC or someone else and you see the demand growing, you're a lot more certain about where the market's going, and you're going to want to get there before or with or before your competitors. So innovation is sparked. Secondly, costs will come down more rapidly because there is more certainty in the marketplace, and this is ultimately about creating new kinds of markets, and so that's something else that happens, and tied to that is investment. So we've seen, whether it's really $130 trillion under GFANS or not, that's really going to be unleashed, the numbers are getting larger, and we want those dollars, those euros, those pounds to flow into this kind of systems change. So that's another piece. The last is, with all due respect to public policymakers, they often lag things that are happening in the real economy. And so if we start to see momentum from this kind of initiative, then I think public policymakers are going to be a lot more inclined to create regulatory structures that turn evolving market structures into mandatory requirements. And then you level the playing field and all the good things that flow from that. And that flows from experience and not just from drawing up ideas in a room like this.
Yes, thank you. This brings me to the next question, which is indeed related to evolution, and evolution also in terms of different initiatives. And I mentioned that indeed 5 years ago things look very different than now, and then also the landscape of initiatives has changed a lot and getting more busy. And we have presented that will be a very important element of SFBA to bring in and basically streamline support for these initiatives, but also to align them. So if you could share with us a little bit of an announcement here, which relates to indeed actually changes in the landscape of initiatives, which relates to BSR, that will be great.
Well, you've set that up beautifully. So we launched 18 years ago an initiative called the Clean Cargo Working Group, and I'll give credit to IKEA. IKEA came to us and said, there's no collaborative platform for driving down the emissions level coming from ocean shipping. And so we launched this initiative. It has grown to embrace, as I recall, figure 85% of ocean shipping capacity was represented within this group. And just last week, the group voted to fold this effort in to the SFBA. And so at BSR, we're very proud of the things that we have been able to create with partners. We're also proud when we spin something out or we can merge so that there's greater impact. And that's what's going to happen. Clean Cargo is going to shift to be part of the Sustainable Freight Buyers Alliance, which we celebrate. You can think of it as addition by subtraction. And this is something that our more than 300 member companies are desperately hungry for. I visited with a big UK-based company in London before taking the train up to Glasgow, and the topic of discussion went very quickly to initiative fatigue and proliferation of initiatives which disaggregates influence. We need to aggregate influence and effort, and I guarantee you, I'm sure for Nestle, MSC, and for every company that's walking around this hall, there is initiative fatigue, and we need to start pulling things together. So we've sunsetted things before. We helped to form the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance, which aimed to increase purchasing power and ease the purchase of renewable energy from stationary sources in the United States, along with RMI and WWF and WRI. With BSR, it was the march of the three-letter acronyms. We all merged our programs into a single new entity. And so we are, again, proud to let go of things when it seems like there will be greater impact, because that really is the ultimate goal. We want a simple system that works so that more people are drawn to it.
Yes, thank you. So indeed, this is a very important support towards SFBA, of course. There will be very important elements of Clean Cargo going to SFBA, while Clean Cargo will remain indeed the organization to bring about container shipping related data. And maybe, Olivier, you want to say a couple of words as SFC is...
Very thankful for BSR and the members to choose SFC to be our new home. So we're 18 years is a good run, and let's see how we are hosting the new members. And I believe Nestle is also a member of Clean Cargo, so already. So we have, I think, quite a bit of overlaps. So it's nice to have a complementary membership offering. So.
Yes, so indeed we have been having in the past a lot of joint meetings, a lot of interactions, and a lot of engagements between the two organizations. So indeed it was also very much welcomed by the common members. But Sophie, I would really like to ask you to have your view. And if you established the Smart Freight Center, you have seen how the landscape of different initiatives have been changing in the past, let's say, 8 years. And you are also now in a seat where you see a lot of initiatives, and you see the interactions and the need for alignment and so on. So it would be great to hear how you see the role in SFBA here, and how would success look like in a year or two, for example.
Well, first of all, wonderful to be here. It's also a little bit emotional, because when you set up an organization, and I left it in good hands of Olivier and other colleagues at Smart Freight Center at the beginning of this year. There's three things I wanted to explain. The first one is that when we started Smart Freight Center, we saw a lot of initiatives already there, and we realized we needed to consolidate them, but first on one thing, measurement. Because there were too many initiatives doing many things, and if we could demonstrate it for one thing, which was measurement, then we could next move to action in other areas. So that was done by Alan Lewis, who's sitting here, and Suzanne Green, and other people of the team who were instrumental in looking at Clean Cargo as a methodology, use EPA Smart Way, the European standards. We had IATA with a standard, we had tools like Eco-Transit, and we combined their methodologies into one global methodology across all modes called the GLAC framework. And this GLEC framework then was used again by all those initiatives that contributed to it, and they tweaked their own methodologies a little bit to make sure they were now in line with others. And then we took that methodologies to the ISO, and there's now going to be 4 more ISO standard launched by the end of the year that covers not only freight but also passenger transport. So we ticked that one off. And that then replaces the European standards. So all of a sudden we have a uniform measurement of emissions across the world. What the SFBA is going to do is it's going to do the same for action initiatives. Because what the risk is that there's so many initiatives happening everywhere and companies are asked to join. Can you do something on zero emissions trucking? Oh no, now it's about ships. Oh, now it's about efficiency. Oh, it's in China, it's in South Africa, it's in the US. And the freight sector in itself is already so fragmented. Carriers like yourself can't keep up with it. And then they have to deal with those 20, 30, hundreds of customers they work with. So that's the value that SFBA is going to create. Where I think you need, where the landscape has shifted in terms of type of actions, is that, yes, there was in a session about zero emission steel, and it was really clear we need to green our power sector, because that's going to be so critical to get green steel, right? So whether we use hydrogen or others, but that's the thing. The same will apply to freight. We're going to need to move to zero emission ships, zero emissions airplanes, zero emissions trucks and vans, yeah? And we need to focus on efficiency. So that's avoiding fuller trucks, efficient trucks, etc. But the end game is getting to zero emissions vehicles and vessels, right? And we need efficiency because we need to bring emissions down as much as we can, as fast as we can. We need to both. So I think SFBA is able to not only work with some, in-depth initiatives like Getting to Zero Coalition, focusing on zero emission shipping, but complement that with all the other things around it that bring that efficiency in there as well. Final comment is about policy. I've just been in this job for 9 months, very exciting. We built this pavilion, so that was a big task to do. But what I've realized is that governments are looking for industry to innovate. And so the moment the SFBA is able to bring a number of things that are really innovations in the sector, then they will start putting the policies in place to put it in place. And we've seen that with trucking, right? Or with electric vehicles, industry leads, or few industry players lead. There's usually a handful of companies. A policy follows, more businesses follow, then more policy, and so you get that what we call an ambition loop between policy and business. And I'm really privileged to be in this position as Managing Director of Women Business Coalition, because I'm going to fight double hard to make sure that this is what's going to happen for the freight sector. So while I'm not involved with Smart Freight Center directly, I wish it all my heart, and I will support the SFBA and Smart Freight Center, along with partners like BSR and World Economic Forum, as much as I can. Thank you.
Thank you. This means really a lot for us. So indeed, I see a lot of passion coming through from the different presenters, from different elements of SFBA, and even elements which were not presented on this screen earlier were coming up. So the potential is definitely there, and we build it up, I think, step by step, and we will build it up with existing initiative. We build it up on building on existing tools, and I think that is a very important message. But maybe to go another round of questions, I would really like to ask the panelists to bring about the one thing that you're really the most excited about when you think about the future of this initiative, and that one thing, how will you add to make that element come true? Not sure if somebody would like to get going. I see Aaron, yes?
Sure. So lots and lots of talk about Scope 3, and this is, I believe, the only initiative that is relevant to literally every company's Scope 3 emissions. In other contexts, you've got more defined value chains. You might be dealing with, coffee growing. You might be dealing with apparel, all sorts of things. Every company has transport and logistics. So this is quite literally the one initiative that is relevant for every single company in the world. And in that regard, the potential and the need are both really, really substantial. So we all have good reason to stand behind it. You can even hear people in the other room cheering us on. We have a lot of reason to get behind it and make it work. The payoff is really big.
Yes, thank you. But
I think this type of initiative is extremely important because it really does help bring to life the ambitions of the carriers that really want to do the right thing. I mean, our commitment as a company is net zero for 2050. We haven't been as visible or vocal about it as some others, but absolutely it's our commitment. But we can't get there alone. We need our customers to be there on the journey. And those shippers that would say, yes, you must do A, B, C, and D, but then say, well, we don't expect it to cost us any money or require any real commitment on our part. Frankly, I'll call that greenwashing to be kind. It's really not helping to solve the problem. I think bringing like-minded companies together that really are prepared to stand shoulder to shoulder on the journey is exactly what we need. Those are the kind of partners we need to serve, and you're absolutely right that we do need to meet the needs of our customers, and if they're loud and clear about what they want, we'll be ready and we'll provide it.
thank you. Yes, Owen.
So yeah, there we go. So I would just add that for Nestle, the most important thing really is to start to provide some hope in this journey. So we're starting to be able to tell great stories about what we're doing with farmers. We're starting to talk about our tree planting and landscape management actions, but at the moment we haven't had too many examples on the freight and logistics side. And I think it would be great to really start to pull out those stories of collaboration and impact. We've got some, some good small-scale stuff that we've done, for example, in Switzerland around hydrogen vehicles, etc. But going beyond that and actually starting to map out a path forward, starting to bring out the stories of how companies are working together on this, I think is a really exciting opportunity, and we'd really like to see that come out of this engagement.
Yes, thank you. So maybe to add to Owen a little bit the voice of some of the companies we have been talking in the past few months, they were really got excited about the collaboration platform and are ready to bring out some concrete collaboration ideas. And it is really our intention for already in May, as David indeed presented in May, 9th of May, we would like to bring forward already some concrete collaboration ideas. And we are not promising that we will, bring down the stars from the beginning, but we want to start small, go step by step. And the potential is there to have very big scale innovative projects really brought about via this initiative, while indeed the idea is that the project management part will always be with an external party who comes in with a concrete idea. And I think it was mentioned before, it can be an initiative, but it can be also a company coming forward with that idea and managing forward. But the important element is indeed that we're going to track it. And that will really make, I think, that element of SFBA important, that when we are going to stand here in a year or two, we will be able to actually show how we're progressing and how fast we need to step on the gas even further. What are the elements we should be focusing more in the future? So Olivier, in terms of indeed tracking, maybe that's an element you are most excited about, but yeah, of course I'll let you choose.
I think I have a long history with tracking and data. And also like SFC, Smart Freight Center, as you all know, has a long history with frameworks and calculation and reporting, and so it will be part of the expectation is to track companies' performances on how they're doing in terms of like calculation according to the GLEC. So we'll have both a set of KPIs. So far, we're still like ironing those details out, but we are going for 1.5, and part of the SFBA is to really measure. So we're going to be measuring across from a company perspective, and also the cumulative data of 100 million ton. Obviously, we need to start with the company performances. So this is where we're going to be heading in the coming month, and probably more KPIs, but we'll start there in terms of tracking.
Thank you. Sophie?
Well, I'm most proud that we managed to get the stars aligned. So, I mean, kudos to BSR. You're the incubator of collaboration, so many of you. And I remember meeting David Way, and we had a drawing on the board. Angie Farag, we've been talking and working together for years. And I think it takes courage to also decide that sometimes you need to step out of your comfort zone and look to the collaboration with others, like-minded organizations. And so I'm most proud that Smart Freight Center, BSR, and World Economic Forum were all willing to in a way give up something for the greater good together. I think industry will truly welcome that, and I think, of the most fragmented, confusing sector we can imagine, I think this is now becoming the most organized one, so that excites me.
Thank you. So indeed, you have been drawing up those pictures together, Sophie, and with our partners at BSR and later on, of course, with WEF as well. So my question is to you, how do you think, what are we going to present here in a year or two?
In a year or two, I think you're going to really demonstrate that the ambition has been followed by action and that companies are accountable, and that I would like to then contribute by linking that to proactive policy. So it's the ambition, the action, the accountability, the advocacy shown for the freight sector in earnest, and that we can come back and also show the demonstrators outside that it's not just blah, 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 it's actually really hard facts and figures, and we're on our way to, what was it, 100 billion tons of CO2?
Exactly.
Exactly, that we're on track, and it's not just an intention, it's being delivered. And I see the companies here and on the videos, they're equally committed as you, so yeah. I see that's we will see that in 2 years.
Yeah, so 100 million, and that is a big number. And of course, in the beginning of the presentation, I was saying that it was difficult 5 years ago to find shippers to take their responsibility and take action. Right now, it is very different, and to reach that 100 million, we will need many more companies. And of course, we have been working with a couple of handfuls of companies, and we will continue to do that in a couple of months. But the most important element of SFBA, I think I can say, is that it will be eventually a place to come for any company, regardless of the maturity they have in terms of their freight sustainability journey. And I just maybe want to ask one round of questions related to that, how important it is on who is going to be in SFB and how that governance model will look like, how we will facilitate basically different value propositions for companies in SFB, how you see that coming together, just to give some tips. Owen.
Well, I can make a general comment, and my comment would be that we're all exploring new forms of collaboration on the net zero journey. So we see this in terms of our work on engaging farmers, on shifting to regenerative agriculture. There's various efforts that have been tried to get companies to collaborate directly together, and I think it's more effective when there's a third party, there's a structure involved which we can all trust, and we can view ourselves as equal players within that structure. And I hope that SFBA can help do that within the logistics sector. So I'd hope that whatever governance arrangement emerges, it has the confidence of all the members and is open and inclusive for new companies to join, sort of wherever they are, but as long as they have that determination to decarbonize and work together with others.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, it's a great question, and because BSR does work on a lot of collaborations, we've seen a lot of different models, and there's some, let's face it, some tensions that arise fairly consistently. So one is speed versus comprehensiveness. So if you want to go very quickly at the pace of leaders one day, you may not bring along as much of a particular ecosystem as you would like. If you play to the lowest common denominator, you water down the ambition. So squaring that circle is really, really important. That's number one. Number two, a clear set of objectives that are reviewed very regularly is really, really important. And related to that is adaptability. The world is changing faster than we can possibly imagine. And so it's important to have a model that works and to build into that model some very explicit signposts along the way where you'll review progress and possibly make course corrections and shift the governance, because otherwise you can lock something in that might have worked 24 months ago and doesn't really work so well now. Let me say one word about greenwashing too. So greenwashing, if we had a word cloud for COP26, greenwashing would be very, very large. I think greenwashing is being used to describe a lot of different things at once. I think, yes, sometimes it is greenwashing, which I describe as statements that are actually deceptive, when an organization says it's doing something and it's not. Greenwashing, though, is also being applied to the gap between ambition and delivery. And so sometimes that's a good faith gap. It's not always deceptive, but it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we deliver as much as we can against ambition and do that transparently, because then if we fall short, it's not greenwashing, it's falling short. We all fall short, right? And then we have to learn from that and build on that. So I want to sort of gracefully accept the fact that there is greenwashing in the world, but not apply it to every gap in performance that might arise.
Yes, thank you. Bud, do you want to?
Well, I use that word. So I would like to address that. And it was the former that I was referring to, not the latter. And when it comes to how SFBA gets organized and governs itself, what I would urge is, put in the leadership roles not those that are just eloquent speakers about the topic, but those that are really committed to driving change and helping move towards the finish line here, whatever that looks like, because we don't know exactly how the story ends in transport. This ocean shipping in particular is an extremely difficult sector to abate. I mean, this is a really big challenge, and it's not a contest of the best soundbite or the best press statement. It's a contest of how do we really get there, and I'm convinced we can only really get there working together, and that's what I would look for from SFBA, and I very much applaud what you're doing.
Yes, thank you. Sophie, please.
Yeah, it's like value proposition and the players who are in it, right? I think the value proposition is that most multinationals, however large their scope 3 emissions for freight is, because it's largely outsourced, it's something they have it's harder to control and have insight. So collaborating through SFBA is the easier way to do it instead of having to figure it out all yourself. It's not under your control. That's one. And in terms of who needs to be involved, the large majority will be through the subcontractors and the subcontractors. So, I mean, I think DHL already has 100,000 subcontractors. So there's so many. So what I think is going to be key is that the shippers, they need to be really clear in the demand. Like, we want green freight, we want zero emissions freight. But they also need to start looking more in working with their subcontractors in collaboration instead of the race to the bottom where on one hand, the sustainability people say we want zero emissions freight, and then the commercial people say, but we need 10% of your price. That is the elephant in the room here. And that applies the same with LFPs with their subcontractors, because of course that cascades down the supply chain. If we want to bring the mom and pop truckers, the smaller trucking companies, the freight forwarders, the LSP in line or enthused by this whole demand side, we must make sure that the value proposition for them to collaborate is that they're going to gain more through collaboration instead of competition, and that is purely market driven. So I think that should be part of your value proposition.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think that's a very good finishing line as well, to bring in all those parties. And indeed, I never imagined that, 5 years ago, that we're going to stand here on the stage and say that we can make that happen, bring those companies in, and to say that indeed we are going to engage so many companies that we will indeed enable that amount of emission reductions by 2030 already. And of course, we're setting up for much more going forward. So. Yeah, finally, indeed, as it was referred previously, we have just published our landing page on SFC's website, and I would like to encourage you to come and have a look, should you be interested in further details about the Alliance, and of course to please sign up for the different update emails we will be sending about this Alliance, and please note in your agenda already the week of 9 May, when we are going to organize, of course, a bigger lunch event alongside other freight-related gatherings somewhere in the world. Is still to be defined. So, and with that, I would like to thank you for the panel for this great input and great suggestions, which we will definitely bring forward. And I indeed very much hope so that we will be here in a year or two as well to present these how we are meeting these expectations and addressing those challenges we put forward here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.